tens a ordem?
Please settle down. The opening ceremony will begin. First. A round of applause for the Deputy Secretary General Maria Pessanha.
Dear executive team, distinguished guests, chairs, staff, chaperones, CLT, and Ms. Morgado, it is my honor to open OPOMUN 2026 as your Deputy Secretary General. We meet at a time when diplomacy determines the difference between protection and peril. The major crises of our era are not abstract case studies. They are human tragedies with clear causes and consequences. In Ukraine, thousands of civilians are killed and injured each year. Entire cities are in ruins and millions remain displaced. What began as a territorial dispute has become a prolonged humanitarian emergency. In Gaza, since October 2023, more than 60,000 people have died and well over 100,000 have been injured. Nearly the entire population have been displaced at least once, and humanitarian agencies have sounded repeated alarms about famine and collapsing infrastructure. In Sudan, the world's largest displacement crisis is unfolding. Over 14 million people have been driven from their homes. More than 25 million are facing starvation, and famine, actual famine, has been confirmed in multiple regions. Globally, over 120 million people are forcibly displaced. This is not a statistic from history books. This is happening now, and it is the highest number ever recorded. These crises share a common root: weakening trust in multilateral institutions, erosion of international humanitarian law, and the temptation to let power outweigh principle. Over the next 3 days, you will do more than reenact debate. You will represent states with competing interests and real constraints. You'll draft resolutions, negotiate amendments, and defend positions you do not personally hold. Treat it seriously. This is training in the craft of prevention. Model UN builds 3 habits that real diplomacy urgently needs: arguing from evidence, compromising without abandoning your principles, and upholding law even when it is difficult. The United Nations was founded with the promise to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. That commitment lives in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. Those are not slogans. They are the frameworks that keep civilians alive. Yet today, disinformation outpaces facts. Humanitarian access is blocked, vetoes stall collective responses, and civilians pay the price. The challenges for you are not merely to pass clauses. It is to decide what kind of diplomacy you want to practice. I borrow a useful image from Rumi, a poet from the 13th century, invoked by Elif Shafak, a political author. Imagine humanity as a compass. One foot rooted in identity and conviction, and the other reaching towards new perspectives and a shared responsibility. Let both feet move together. Ask for the country you represent, what does it stand for? And then ask, how can the position advance stability, human dignity, and protection for civilians? Be rigorous, cite evidence. Know the history behind the policy. Be disciplined, listen before responding. And be accountable. When you write a clause, know whom it helps and how. The crisis you will debate grew from ignored warnings and failed diplomacy. Prevention is rarely dramatic. It is the patient work of institutions and dialogues that keep functioning when headlines move on. That is the spirit that OPOMUN wants you to practice. Our motto, Dare to Make a Difference, is a call to elevate debate rather than polarizing it. Engage complexity, treat opponents as partners in negotiation, and leave this conference a stronger listener and a more effective collaborator than you arrived. The world does not need louder diplomacy. It needs better diplomacy. I hope you enjoy our conference. I would like to yield the floor to our head of school, Ms. Morgado.
Dear all, good morning. The world is not divided by differences. It is united by the challenge we share. With these words in mind, it is CLIP's greatest pleasure and my privilege to welcome you to OPOMUN. In 2026, the world, our world, stands at an important crossroad. Rising nationalism, racism, and disinformation threaten global unity, while conflicts, inequality, climate and water crisis, economic instability, and the rapid advancement of artificial intelligence demand urgent cooperation and action. Urging nations to choose inclusion over isolation and dialogue over division. These issues are complex and interconnected, but here at this conference, you can respond together. As delegates, you are not merely representing your countries. You represent hope, responsibility, and the future of multilateralism. This conference is your opportunity to listen, to lead, and to prove that respectful debate, empathy, and collaboration can shape a more just, sustainable, and peaceful world. Every resolution you draft, every compromise you reach, demonstrates that diplomacy is not just a word. It is action and courage in practice. I urge you to listen honestly, to speak thoughtfully, and act firmly. Let this conference be a reminder that the choices we make today can shape a future rooted in safety and unity. Dear delegates, thank you for participating. Mr. Secretary General, Ms. Deputy Secretary General, logistics, hospitality, staff and media teams, chairs and co-chairs, I thank you profoundly for the 19th edition of OPOMUN. Dear all, I wish you an inspiring, productive, and remarkable conference. I now yield the floor to Mr. Pateira, the OPOMUN Director.
Esteemed delegates and fellow MUN directors, Your Excellency Vitor Angelo, dedicated members of the executive team and chairs, respected members of FLIP's leadership team, Ms. Morgado, faculty and staff, and honored guests. It is a great honor to welcome you to the 19th edition of the Oporto Model United Nations. As we approach 2 decades of this remarkable event, I am proud to witness your unwavering commitments. Year after year, we find it more challenging to find venues capable of allocating all participants. And that challenge exists entirely because of you. On behalf of CLIP and the OPOMUN executive team, I would like to thank all the MUN directors, chaperones, and teachers who dedicate their time and effort to making this initiative available to their students. As for our delegates, I thank you for the courage to rise to the challenge ahead. In a world where the international order may appear increasingly fragile and sometimes even obsolete, it is important to remember that the power of the United Nations derives not from the organization itself, but rather from the states and the individuals who choose to believe in it, who choose to uphold its principles. Its influence exists only to the extent that you are willing to grant it. By standing here today, you are reaffirming that moderation and dialogue can still make a difference. By standing here today, you are taking a leap of faith that the work of the United Nations has shown time and again worth to be taken. With that spirit in mind, I would like to acknowledge those who have ensured that the legacy of OPOMUN continues to blossom within our community, and those who have ensured that OPOMUN is a reality. Mr. Pedro Silva, OPOMUN 2026 Secretary General. Maria Peçanha, OPOMUN 2026 Deputy Secretary General. Inês Teixeira, OPOMUN 2026 Head of Logistics. Guadalupe Cardenas, OPOMUN 2026 Head of Hospitality. Gil Souza, OPOMUN 2026 Head of Staff. And finally, Miguel Lima, OPOMUN 2026 Head of Media. You are among one of the most, if not the most, united executive team that OPOMUN has ever had. And you know this, I do not offer compliments lightly. Over these intense months of work, I've been impressed by your ability to push one another forward. Whenever a problem arose or a mistake was made, and you do know that there were some nerve-wracking moments, rather than seeing fingers pointed, I saw hands raised to find solutions. Having witnessed the friendship and mutual trust you have built, I can only thank you for allowing me to be part of it. But of course, a conference of this magnitude is not organized through friendship alone. It certainly helped to have 2 of CLIP's finest MUNers as Secretary General and Deputy Secretary General. It has helped to have an endlessly versatile and all-rounder head of logistics. It also helped to have 2 of the most sympathetic and charismatic role models of the class of 26 leading our hospitality and staff team. And finally, it helped to have a head of media whose talent is matched only by the fear he has of disappointing his tutor. Your effort, however, serves a purpose greater than ourselves. While people like you ensure that OPOMUN runs smoothly, it is ideas, reflection, and leadership that give meaning to what we do here. To guide us in that reflection and to set the tone for the days ahead, it is my great honor to introduce someone who has dedicated over 3 decades of his career to the service of the United Nations. And, just like I hope you one day end up doing, has dared to make the difference. Having joined the United Nations in 1978, Your Excellency Vitor Angelo has served in senior roles across the organization, including as Executive Representative of Secretary General Kofi Annan in Sierra Leone, and as a Special Representative and Head of the United Nations Mission in Central African Republic and Chad under Ban Ki-moon. Even after retiring, he has continued to serve the international community as a board member of the Peace Nexus Foundation, or by participating in strategic international forums such as the Council of Europe North-South Center. It is now my great honor to introduce our keynote speaker, whose experience in leadership offers invaluable insights as we begin this conference. Please join me in welcoming His Excellency Victor Angelo.
Well, good morning to everyone. Are you hearing me? Hello? Yes. Okay. Yes, very good. Yes. I am very sorry that I am not with you. I am in Lisbon. I could not travel to Porto. I would have loved to be with you, with the team, with everyone participating in this exercise, which I consider extremely important. But I am in the middle of helping the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to get a seat, a non-permanent seat in the Security Council for the years 2027, 2028. And we are extremely busy with that, taking into consideration that we are competing against Germany, which is, of course, a very, very powerful country. And we are also competing with Austria. Austria is not as powerful as Germany, but is certainly a very important competitor as far as Portugal is concerned. And I have to say that they are not kind to us. They say a few things about Portugal that we have to respond to, and to make sure that we get as many votes from the member states as we possibly can. The election will take place in June of this year, and certainly we would like to be part of the Security Council, and we can talk a little bit later about the role of the Security Council. But we would like to be a member of the Security Council, as we have been in the past. If we are elected as non-permanent members for the next 2 years, this will be the 4th time that we are with the Council, with the Security Council, and for the image of our country, that's a very important event. So basically, that's the reason why I am not with you, but I am very honored to be invited to address you, to tell you a little bit about my own experience, and above all, to answer to your questions. Because what I have agreed with Pedro Pateira is that I will make a brief introduction, and for that I received some questions from him. Once I have done that brief introduction, I will be very much available to answer to all your questions and to make sure that this is not a speech, but this is a dialogue. Is that okay with you? Yes, okay, good. So let me tell you a bit what has been my journey as an international civil servant, as an international diplomat. I was probably the first one to be an international diplomat after April 74. So once the regime has changed. At the beginning, I was sent to the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development in Paris, OECD, to represent Portugal at some meetings. That was a time in the 70s, and we are talking about 76, 77, 1976, 1977, when the international community, and particularly the OECD, which was basically an economic organization to which one of the very few to which Portugal was a member too. I was there to try to introduce in the thinking and in the work of the OECD another concept, which is life is not just about economics, life is also about the social dimensions of life. Life is about human dignity, and we have to make sure that beyond the GDP, the gross domestic product, there is also the human being, and employment, for instance, that is taken into account, health conditions are taken into account, and all the other indicators that are not directly linked to the economy, but are important for the human life of every citizen. So we had helped to create a group, a working group, to discuss what could be the social indicators that would show if a country was going in the right direction when it comes to respond to the social needs of the population. And that's the way I began talking to international organizations, to people from many countries. Well, at that time, many countries was not a lot of countries because the members of the OECD was just a small number of countries. But still, it was important to be there and to be seen as the representative of a new country that had just become a democracy, Portugal. During my discussions there, I was discussing also with people coming from the United Nations in New York that were particularly interested also in following our debates about social indicators. And one day I was at the end of one of these meetings in Paris, and I used to go to Paris once a week, every month. I was during 2 years. At the end of one of the meetings, the representative of the United Nations asked me if I would be interested in going to work for the UN, and the country that they had in mind was São Tomé and Príncipe. So I asked what for, and they basically told me that it was to organize the planning and the statistical system of that country, a new country that had just become independent of Portugal. And I said, yes, well, I can go for 1 year. And they said, we will offer you a contract. So I signed for a year, and I stayed with the United Nations after São Tomé and Príncipe for 32 years. So 1 year became 32. And once I retired from the United Nations, at the end of 32 years, I had the opportunity to work for the Council of Europe, basically on human dimensions, human rights, and also to work for a major Swiss foundation that deals with peace building and conflict resolution in many parts of the world. So I spent another, I would say, 12 years after the 32 at the UN, I spent another 12 years working with other organizations on fundamentally matters related to peace, to security, and to conflict resolution. So that's basically what brought me up to now. I worked in many countries. I can say that I worked in all the African countries because I was for several years the director of operations in New York for Africa. So I was in charge of supervising the operations of the United Nations, the development operations of the United Nations in the African continent. But I also resident in many countries for 29 years, many of them in Africa, but some of them in Asia, including in East Timor, in the Philippines, and in Myanmar. So during these long years with the United Nations, I start first dealing with development issues, and particularly with questions related to population growth and trying to make sure that people would be able to control the growth of their population and be able to respond to the needs of the new generations, particularly the young people. Then I went into the broader area of development, and I worked for several years as the representative of the United Nations in different countries dealing with development. Some of them particularly difficult. One of them that was particularly difficult was Mozambique. At that time, I spent 5 years in Mozambique, and Mozambique was going through a civil war, and it was quite difficult to do operations in the field in a context of civil war. I also worked in another country that was extremely difficult because of what was going on in terms of political decisions by the president, and that was Zimbabwe. But and also the pleasure to work in countries where things could move in the right direction, and one of them was Tanzania, where I spent a few years, the Gambia, and so on and so forth. So basically, what I want to tell you is that during all those years with UN and later on with other organizations, I was able to work in many different contexts and in many different areas, from development to humanitarian affairs, from humanitarian affairs to political and conflict prevention, and later on to peacekeeping operations. And that was the end of my career during the last few years, was basically dealing with peacekeeping operations, meaning trying to make sure that countries could reach some kind of peace agreement inside or with neighboring countries, and then help those countries to implement and to respect the peace agreement. So that was the work on peacekeeping. I was also going up the ladder, of course, as the years went on. So I started as a very junior professional. When I started with the UN, I was 20 years old. So I started at the very beginning of the professional career. And when I left the UN, I had spent several years, the last several years, at the level of Under Secretary General which is the second level within the UN, as special representative. And special representative means that you not only represent the Secretary General, but you respond directly to the Security Council on behalf of the Secretary General. So instead of the Secretary General going in person to the Security Council to explain what is going on in country A, country B, in the Sahel, or in Myanmar, or in Mozambique, or Angola, or so on and so forth, you go yourself and you explain to the members of the Security Council, and you have, of course, to be able to convince them that what the United Nations is doing in those countries is the right approach and is within the mandate that the Security Council has given to the mission or to the United Nations. So the work with the Security Council is a very special work in the sense that you are not under the authority of one single person, the Secretary General. You are under the authority of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. And as you know, the 5 permanent members of the Security Council are the United States, France, the United Kingdom, China, and Russia. But you are also under the authority of the other 10 non-permanent members, because the Security Council has 15 members. So 5 permanent members and 10 non-permanent members. So you are also under the authority of those 10 non-permanent members of the Security Council. And one of the things you have to make sure is that you are able to convince each one of these countries, and particularly the 5 that are the veto power, that you are doing the right thing. So you are in a special situation. You are not under the authority of one single person, as I said, and you are not there because you are from country A or from country B. You are there because you are able to convince the Security Council that the work that the United Nations is doing in one region, in one country, in one conflict, in one crisis is the right kind of work. And that's basically what the special representative has to do. My advantage is that I had not been promoted to the position of special representative because of political reasons. I never received any kind of support from any political party. I never received any kind of support from any member of the Security Council trying to promote my candidature to the position of special representative. And I have to say, and I should say that very loudly because it's not very often the case, I have never received any kind of support from the Portuguese government. I was there because I had the experience and I had worked in many countries, and I have seen many conflicts, and I have in many ways tried to solve some of those conflicts. One of the questions that was raised when I received the questions coming from your side was if there was a particular day that has stayed with me during my career. And I have to tell you, I had many, many particular days, but one special day was when we, my wife and I, we were in Mozambique after 5 years, and we received in 1985, we received a telegram. At that time, things were still done by telegram. We received a telegram from New York asking us if we would like to go as UN rep to Rio de Janeiro or as UN rep to Bangui in the Central African Republic. And of course, as you can imagine, the difference in terms of living conditions between Rio de Janeiro and Bangui were simply abyssal. But we had no idea where Bangui in the Central African Republic was. We had to spend the evening, and there was no light that day in Maputo because of the crisis and the civil war that was taking place in Mozambique. There was no light in the city, so we had to take a torch and take a map and look at the map and see if we could find where Bangui was located. And finally, we located Bangui, and we sent the following day a telegram to New York saying that our choice would be to go to Bangui and not to Rio de Janeiro. And that was a critical moment in my career because I was clearly opting for a career related to problem solving, to conflict resolution, and not to just being a representative of the United Nations, because that's what I would do if I had gone to Brazil. So that was, in many ways, a decisive point in my career when I decided that the future for the UN and the future for myself and for my family was to opt for very, very difficult situations, try to find a solution to those situations, and see if we had success. And if there was success, of course, there was the possibility of promotions and so on and so forth. And that's why I entered in a speedy career path because of that decision. So that was certainly one of the most important days in my life with the UN system. It was to decide between conflict resolution or being just a diplomat and a representative. But I had many, many other situations, including one case where one of our planes decided to crash, and I was on the plane. We were going to the border between Rwanda and Tanzania when there was the massacre in Rwanda of the Hutu population and the Tutsi population as well. So we crashed, but we survived that crash. Another very important time was when I took my younger daughter to the border, to that same border between Rwanda and Tanzania, to see thousands and thousands of bodies floating along the river coming from Rwanda because they have been killed by the other citizens of the country. And that was the crisis of 1994, 1994, 1995. So that was a very, very, very special, very dramatic situation, including, of course, for my daughter that was just 12 years old. So there were many, many situations in my career that were special days. I can tell you another special day, and that will be the last one, but we could spend the day talking about that, is when I organized the first pre-elections in Tanzania and Zanzibar. And in Zanzibar, the government had lost the elections, and we agreed that after counting the votes, we would go to the public session and we will announce that the government had lost the elections. So I went to the room with them, and the president of the Electoral Commission says the following to the assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased to announce that the government of Zanzibar has won the elections. So we had changed completely the result along the corridor between our meeting room and the assembly where everybody was expecting for the announcement of the results. And you can imagine the shock that I had at that time and the kind of challenge that represented to myself. Just I cannot answer to all the questions, but I want to mention 2 or 3 more things before we go into questions. One of the things is I want you to make sure that you know the Charter of the United Nations. I hope you are seeing it in your screens. This is a fundamental document. It's absolutely essential to know the Charter very well and to make sure that every principle of this Charter is implemented, is respected by the UN member states. And what we are seeing nowadays is that most of these principles of the Charter are not being respected. One of them is the respect for the sovereignty of every nation. And in one of the speeches, and I was very pleased to listen to your introductory speeches, one of the speeches mentioned the case of Ukraine, where we have a clear example of a violation of the UN Charter by a major member state of the United Nations, not only a major member state, but also one of the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. So it's very important that we respect fully and make sure that there is full respect for the UN Charter. There is also a need to make sure that people understand that the United Nations has 3 major objectives. One is the political objective, which is peace and security, to make sure that there is peace and security throughout the world. The second objective of the United Nations is about development. And we have to make sure that the difference between the North and the South, what we call today the developed North and the global South, that difference in terms of development is diminished, that the gap is not as big as it is today, and the gap is extremely important nowadays. And not only that, the gap is becoming bigger and bigger. And the third dimension of the United Nations, besides peace and security, besides development, is human rights, human dignity, what we call normally human rights. We have to make sure that people are fully respected and that their rights are fully protected by their member states, their countries, and this is one of the issues that is nowadays a major challenge. Besides that, of course, we have to deal with the global challenges, and there are quite a number of global challenges. I will mention just two or three. One of them is climate change, that everybody knows about. The other global change is the epidemics and global health. The other one, the third one, is to make sure that the difference between men and women are cancelled, and that men and women have the same rights, and there is equality between men and women. And there are many other changes, some of them completely new, for which the UN is not yet prepared. Just think. Two more points. There was a question, how can one get into a diplomatic career? Well, there are different ways. One of them is, of course, to pay attention to the announcements made by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they every 1 or every 2 years have openings for future diplomats, and I think that's a very important way of getting into it. Another way is to make sure that one, when finishes university, gets into an international NGO and works for a couple of years with a major international NGO, and I'm not going to mention any, but you know many of them, international NGOs, and very often it's quite possible to move from those international NGOs into a UN agency, into the UN system, or into any other organization that is of a multilateral nature, like the European Union, like NATO, like the OECD, like any other international organization. So the route through the NGOs is certainly a very important route, and is a way of doing some voluntary work first, gaining experience, and be in a position to compete for the openings that appear when they appear, of course. So that's basically, I'm looking at the questions that were posed to me. I hope, Pedro, that I have answered to most of the questions, but as I said, I am entirely available to answer to any other question that you might wish to raise. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you found my words useful.
Okay. Anyone that wants to ask any questions, please make a line at the podium in the center of the room.
Fazer uma pergunta.
Everyone else that did not stand up at this time will not be able to join the line due to time constraints.
So I'd like to thank you for the speech, or as you say, the dialogue. I was wondering in all your time in this career path, if you have ever seen a level of polarization that we're seeing now domestically, or political extremism, and in that time or in that instance, how was it dealt with or how did it develop?
Yeah, you want me to answer to each one of the questions, is that so?
Yes.
Well, we are in a very difficult time. You know that the United Nations is not going well. One of there are two major problems. One of the problems is that the Security Council is deeply divided, and that division comes from basically 2011 with the Libyan conflict. At that time, the United Nations approved the resolution concerning Libya, which was basically to protect the Libyan population from Colonel Gaddafi and his men. The fact of the matter is that some of the countries that offered troops. Sorry? I have lost your message. Yeah, okay, good. So I was saying that since about 15 years, the Security Council has been very divided. And this is one of the reasons why the United Nations is meeting very serious problems in terms of finding solutions to major conflicts. And I am talking about, you mentioned Ukraine, you mentioned Gaza, you mentioned Sudan. I would mention also Myanmar, for instance, where there is a major conflict going on. And not only that, there is the problem of the Rohingya population that had to leave the country and move to Bangladesh to save their lives. So there is this extremely important division among the members, the five permanent members of the Security Council. That's one of the reasons. And the second reason is that many countries have decided to delay or not pay their contributions to the United Nations, which basically means that there is less money, there are less resources available to do the work, and this is now becoming a major issue. The Secretary General has just mentioned a few days ago that the drawers are empty, and there is only enough money up to June, July of this year. So the question of the contributions is a very, very important question. I have to tell you one thing that people don't talk about, but last year, 77% of the contributions by the member states were not paid. And that's a very important figure. Only 23% of the member states paid their dues to the organization. And that basically means that the work when it comes to peacekeeping, the work when it comes to humanitarian affairs, to health, to education, to food and agriculture, and so on and so forth, cannot be done. And if those things cannot be done, the people in the less developed countries are the ones that are suffering. And this is now a major issue. So if there are two flags that we have always to raise, is the question of we have to find a Security Council that is more representative of the world of today. We cannot have a Security Council that represents the world of 1945. We have to have a Security Council that shows how the world is in the 21st century. So representativeness of the Security Council is very important. And the second thing is that the member states have indeed to pay their contributions to their organization. If they don't pay that and move those resources to, for instance, defense or some other areas, the United Nations cannot survive, cannot do the work that they are supposed to do. So there is a very serious polarization, and there is a very serious competition between the major countries, particularly what we call the superpowers, and in particular between the United States and China. So all these things are making it extremely difficult for the world of today, and we don't know what's going to happen in the near future. But if we are not brave enough to say that this kind of situations cannot continue, that this kind of situations need to be sorted out, need to be resolved, and that cooperation is the only word that matters, is the only way we can resolve all the challenges that the world is facing. We are going in the wrong direction, and we can have major conflicts in the near future. So it's a very difficult, very bad, very pessimistic situation, but we should not be pessimists. We have to believe that if we fight, we will be able to convince others that things have to change.
What would you say was your key motivator to start dedicating most of your career to international diplomacy?
Well, I basically I was interested in seeing the world first, and also interested in trying to find a solution to some of the problems that already many years ago, in the 70s, were already there. They were very much related at that time to two things. One was the Cold War, and the other one was development. So these were the two major motives that brought me to the United Nations, is to see how we could move out of the Cold War and how we could promote development, particularly in the countries that had gained independence recently.
So much for your speech. I would just like to ask what lessons from Angola's own post-conflict reconstruction can be applied to the current post-war settings such as Sudan or Sahel region?
Well, basically, we talk a lot about ceasefires, but ceasefire is just one step. What we have to make sure is that there is a peace plan, because a ceasefire doesn't last long. So we have to be much braver than we have been so far, and come up with proposals that lead countries to find a peaceful solution to their conflicts. There will always be conflicts. There will always be disputes within countries, between countries, but we have to be able to say those disputes can be resolved if the following issues are addressed. And one of the critical addresses is governance. We have to make sure that those that are in positions of power, those that politically are the leaders of our countries, are indeed the most competent and the most committed people. Without commitment, without competency, what we will have is just opportunists. And opportunists are the ones that lead us to situations of conflict. So let's fight opportunism and let's promote people that are indeed committed to finding solutions and are committed to the common good.
Angelo, thank you for your responses. I was just wondering what your opinion is on how to maintain the UN as the center of upholding peace and justice in the world, as initiatives such as Donald Trump's quote, Board of Peace, are Rosen.
Well, that's an extremely difficult question because this Board of Peace, for many of us, sounds like an attempt by its creator, and I don't want to mention the name of the creator, but you know whom I am talking about, like an attempt to replace the UN by something else that he himself controls and he himself can make use of. So we have to be very clear that the Board of Peace is not representative. Many countries do not see themselves as members of the Board of Peace. What we need is the United Nations, because the United Nations is a community of nations, a community of peoples, and there is a charter, as I said, and there are 80 years of experience and 80 years during which we have created quite a number of principles, of norms, of rules, of institutions that function if they have the resources, if they are respected, and those institutions can bring peace and can find a solution to the issues that are on the table.
For my question, I would like to ask, what are your opinions on the current state of humanitarian rights in big political parties such as US, Russia, China, and some of the most common Gaza war, Ukrainian war? Just an opinion, please.
Well, very difficult question. The point I mentioned at the very beginning is that human rights is one of the key pillars, one of the three key pillars of the United Nations. And some countries, including countries that are permanent members of the Security Council, do not respect the rights of the people, and that for sure is a violation of international law, and we cannot accept that kind of violations. So we have violations of international law in, I would say, all the countries that you have mentioned. Thank you for the invitation, and have a good continuation.
We will now introduce the OPOMUN 2026 chairing teams, starting with the Security Council, with main chair Beatriz Rezende, co-chair Diogo Lopes, Sarina Markelli. Please approach the stage.
Now, our Historical Security Council, our main chair, Francisco Santos, and our two co-chairs, Matilde Marzo and Beatriz Mota, please approach the stage.
Next is the International Court of Justice, with as its president Yasmin Melo, vice president Peter Yatsenko, and registrar Luis Santos.
For our World Health Organization, we have as main chair Benedita Soares, Carolina Falero, and Matias Carepa.
The UNODC will have as its main chair Leonor Bastos, and co-chairs Inês Mendonça and Lourenço Rebelo.
For our for our DISEC, we have Manuel Campente as main chair, and then Amaya Shan and Maria Rodrigues are as our co-chairs.
For ECOSOC, the Economic and Social Council, we have main chair Michelle Chavankova, Eden Ibenson, and Pilar Manassas as co-chairs.
For our Human Rights Committee, we have Francisca Vilas as main chair, and then as our co-chairs, we have Gabriel Zard and Francisca Mamed. Round of applause.
Last but not the least, we have the committee that is going to be formed on the last day with the merging of ECOSOC and HR, the General Assembly, with main chair Pedro Silva, co-chairs Maria Peçanha and Beatriz Relvas.
Now we have our Secretary General Pedro Silva with his speech. Round of applause.
Dear delegates, chaperones, staff, honorable chairs, extinguished guests, and fellow executive team, it is my pleasure to welcome you to OPOMUN 2026. It is inspiring to see the way a distant calendar date and a tall pile of work translated into this room, this audience, and this stage. And it goes without saying that all of this couldn't ever have happened if it wasn't for the blood, sweat, and tears for many special individuals here present that worked day and night, sunshine and storm, to put a badge over everyone's neck and to take a never-ending to-do list and bring it to reality. Frankly, it seems unreal that the conference is about to begin. I feel like the next sharing session is at 4 o'clock this afternoon, and that at least 3 more emails need answering. But strangely, everything seems to be ready to go. Now, more seriously, in the past 100 years, the world has gone through hundreds of wars and conflicts that proliferate hate, injustice, and death. Politicians, generals, dictators, kings and queens have used their leveraged positions to impose their will over all else, discarding rights of self-determination, rejecting their own population's civil liberties. Even after the end of the Second World War and the creation of the United Nations, the New World Order that was forged under the shadow of the United States and the Soviet Union didn't eliminate these problems, and rather split the world into two, pitching children against parents, spreading political doctrine instead of teaching the values of peace, respect, and tolerance. However, we mustn't forget that not every tragedy is political. Successive financial crises have shocked the markets and evaporated entire life savings. The COVID-19 pandemic froze the world in a never-before-seen paralysis that halted trade, lives, entire economies, and forced business to close and unemployment and disgrace to spread as if it were a disease of its own. This is precisely why MUN is so important. Contrary to many people's beliefs, diplomacy doesn't stop at reconciling enemies and ending armed conflicts. In fact, most of the time, diplomacy means the assembly of stakeholders that know they can achieve much more together than they ever could alone. Diplomacy means dialogue when it is radio silent. It means commitment when all backs are turned. It means spending 3 days in a conference room with strangers to find solutions to some of the world's hardest and toughest challenges there is right now, navigating complex problems and volatile foreign policies. Now, into the less generic speech, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on why you are all here with us today. What makes you roll out of bed in the morning every day and live your life as intensely as you possibly can? What ignites that insatiable fire you have within you? I am a believer that that uncontrollable power of will you have stored inside you can be adapted and applicable to every situation, especially in moments of uncertainty and high stakes. MUN is the place for that fire to be lit. Inside your committee sessions, you will find yourself at the brink of a diplomatic disaster or an international crisis, but deep down, you know you will stop at nothing to defend your principles and to stand up against anyone who dares to oppress what you stand for. This is what the world needs the next generation to have. Justice and freedom must be protected, even when points of view diverge. MUN can be seen by some as an extracurricular activity or something that looks good in a CV, but I, along with countless others, believe it to be a practical lesson on tolerance, on democracy, on respect, all of which are values the world desperately needs today. Take this chance to hear every point of view and bridge differences between opposite poles. Enjoy meeting new people and make memories for life. Throughout this conference, I simply urge you to listen, to be brave, and to dare to make a difference. Thank you. I now invite the rest of the members of the executive team to open the conference. We officially declare OPOMUN 2026 open. Now please direct your attention to the screen and as we hand it out to our media team to show the opening video for this year's OPOMUN.
The home. So the boy stayed with the father. They were both detained and taken over 1,000 miles to a detention.
We have never really asked anything of them. You know, they'll say they sent some troops to Afghanistan.
What world is this? Honestly, tell me. You and your fancy suits? Ironic, right? Your dress-up shirts and pencil skirts, your shiny shoes and your bold heels. They're not doing much healing, are they? It hurts, it bleeds, and you sit there, looking down at a screen, blinded by the glow of a tireless scroll, convincing yourself that the light shining through the looking glass is real. But what is real? What is true? What truth are we chasing, and how does it keep evading us? It seems to me that your truth must be very different from mine, or mine, or mine. I'm feeling blue, and so are you. It seems that living has become a privilege, not a right. Governments and institutions have failed us. Our voices tremble against giants, and our pens hesitate at the ballot. Borders set in stone have become suggestions of self-determination, and self-determination has become an apparent right to invade and attack. So, I am feeling blue. For me, and for you. Gone are the times of a glass half empty or a glass half full. It's shattered. It hurts.
And is this
it bleeds.
The end of the matter?
We, this people, on a small and lonely planet, traveling through casual space, past aloof stars, across the way of indifferent suns, and we sit here like suns, indifferent and numb, and when we come to it, there won't be an it to come to.
So what role did native soldiers actually play?
When we come to it, we, this people, on this wayward floating body, created on this earth, of this earth, have the power to fashion for this earth a climate where every man and woman can live freely, without sanctimonious piety, without crippling fear. When we come to it, we must confess that we are the possible. We are the miraculous, the true wonder of this world. That is when, and only when, we come to it. So, I too feel blue. But I suspect that this blue is far warmer, gentle, kind. And yes, shiny shoes and bold heels won't fix it, and neither will your words. At least not today. But the simple fact that you choose to be here, and nowhere else, that means something. It means that you care. And even if you don't, you're listening, you're debating, you're engaging. As our core intellect is threatened by artificial slop, thinking, empowering, and creating, truly creating, might be all that's left of us, of you.
Said that President Trump was right, and that America's chatbot of the X platform, Holocaust denying, and then there were these raids.
In pop culture, it comes down to a red or a blue pill.
Here, it's about feeling blue, or feeling blue.
Illusions become truths, fiction becomes non-fiction, and dystopias don't just turn into utopias.
So, what blue will you choose? What journey will you venture on?
Feeling blue? We can fix it. Stop looking for heroes and start making a difference.
If you dare.
We will not. Está ligado? Está ligado. Mr. We will now hear the logistics briefing from our head of logistics. Please pay attention as this is crucial information on the conference.
So hi guys, I'm Ines Teixeira, this year's OPOMUN Head of Logistics. Firstly, I would just like to say that we're so happy to have you here. It's truly a pleasure to welcome all of you, and I hope you enjoyed the opening ceremony. I know you're all hungry, so I'll make this really quick. I'll just give you some information regarding the logistics of the conference. First, I want to talk about the social events. We're going to have, it's going to be at Heart Club Porto today at 8 p.m. and ending at 11 p.m. The venue is located at Mercado Ferreira Borges. It's right in the city center. The dress code is black tie, and there will be finger food provided, okay? Now, you're going for lunch, and after the lunch break, you need to be back by 3:30 p.m. You cannot be late, guys. For lunch, please consult the list of restaurants that was previously sent to you. These options were carefully selected to be close, efficient, and suitable for our schedule, and please follow the indications given by our staff when leaving. When exiting and re-exiting, we need you to be patient as everyone has to have their badge scanned, so it might take a while. And always have your badge with you, guys. Please don't leave your badge behind. That's all from me, so have fun, enjoy your time in Porto, and I hope you have an amazing conference. Thank you.
Everyone